Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib becoming a major headache for the Democratic Party. So far, top Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries and Nancy Pelosi have declined to condemn her false claim that blames Israel for the hospital blast in Gaza, even though initial U.S. intelligence says otherwise. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is backtracking a little bit after accusing Israel of striking the hospital. She's now blaming press reports, including the Associated Press, for spreading false information.
Unfortunately, the Democratic Party are bystanders to a destructive movement that they themselves encouraged. Democrats didn't riot or loot either, but the mindset of oppression that has infected our culture has been egged on by that party. And that's where Tlaib does damage. It's not in our politics. It's actually in our entertainment. It's in our conversation. It's wherever we go.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Tlaib has repeatedly made atrocious statements against our ally Israel and in support of Hamas.
I'm the only Palestinian American serving in Congress, Mr. Chair, and my perspective is needed here now more than ever. I will not be silenced, and I will not let you distort my words. Folks forget I'm from the city of Detroit, the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, where I learned to speak truth to power even if my voice shakes. Trying to bully or censor me won't work, because this movement for a ceasefire is much bigger than one person. It's growing every single day. There are millions of people across our country who oppose Netanyahu's extremism and are done watching our government support collective punishment and the use of white phosphorus bombs that melt flesh to the bone. They are done watching our government, Mr. Chair, supporting cutting off food, water, electricity, and medical care to millions of people with nowhere to go. Like me, Mr. Chair, they don't believe the answer to war crimes is more war crimes. The refusal of Congress and the administration to acknowledge Palestinian lives is chipping away at my soul. Over 10,000 Palestinians have been killed. Majority were children. But let me be clear. My criticism has always been of the Israeli government and Netanyahu's actions. It is important to separate people and governments, Mr. Chair. No government is beyond criticism. The idea that criticizing the government of Israel is anti-Semitic sets a very dangerous precedent, and it's being used to silence diverse voices speaking up for human rights across our nation. Do you realize what it's like, Mr. Chair, for the people outside the chamber right now, listening in agony to their own government dehumanizing them? To hear the President of the United States we helped elect dispute death tolls as we see video after video of dead children and parents under rubble? Mr. Chair, do you know what it's like to fear rising hate crimes, to know how Islamophobia and anti-Semitism makes us all less safe, and worry that your own child might suffer the horrors that 6-year-old Wadia did in Illinois? I can't believe I have to say this, but Palestinian people are not disposable. We are human beings, just like anyone else. My city, my grandmother, like all Palestinians, just wants to live her life with freedom and human dignity we all deserve. Speaking up to save lives, Mr. Chair, no matter faith, no matter ethnicity, should not be controversial in this chamber. The cries of the Palestinian and Israeli children sound no different to me. What I don't understand is why the cries of Palestinians sound different to you all. We cannot lose our shared humanity, Mr. Chair. I hear the voices of advocates in Israel, in Palestine, across America, and around the world for peace. I am inspired by the courageous survivors in Israel who have lost loved ones, yet are calling for a ceasefire and the end to violence. I am grateful to the people in the streets for the peace movement, with countless Jewish Americans across the country standing up and lovingly saying, "Not in our name." We will continue to call for a ceasefire, Mr. Chair, for the immediate delivery of critical humanitarian aid to Gaza, for the release of all hostages and those arbitrarily detained, and for every American to come home. We will continue to work for a real lasting peace that upholds human rights and dignity of all people, and centers in peaceful coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians, and censures no one, and ensures that no person, no child has to suffer or live in fear of violence. 71% of Michigan Democrats support a ceasefire. So you can try to censure me, but you can't silence their voices. I urge my colleagues to join with the majority of Americans and support a ceasefire now to save as many lives as possible. President Biden must listen to and represent all of us, not just some of us. I urge the president to have the courage to call for a ceasefire and the end of killings. Thank you, and I yield.
The gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition to this censure resolution that is blatantly Islamophobic, anti-democratic, and an utter waste of time. This resolution is as dishonest as it is unproductive. Any member who denies that Congresswoman Tlaib has opposed the killing of civilians, Israeli, Palestinian, and Americans alike, is willfully ignoring the truth. Representative Tlaib was elected by voters in Michigan to do exactly what she does best: advocate for a better, safer, more just world. She leads with love, speaks truth to power, and seeks justice even when her life and that of her family and her staff are threatened. As a daughter, mother, sister, friend, advocate, and effective duly elected 3-term first ever Palestinian American member of Congress, she has been a much needed voice in an institution that has too often failed to listen. Today, Republicans are again attacking a Democratic colleague just because they don't like what she has to say. Another shameful but predictable ploy of distraction from the real traffickers of hate who are obsessed with policing progressive women of color. I oppose this offensive resolution for every little girl from Michigan to the Middle East who sees herself when they see the leadership of Representative Rashida Tlaib, and I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
I will yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Dingell.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this resolution. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is an important member of our Democratic caucus and our Michigan delegation. Her voice matters. She is the only Palestinian American in the Congress, and this is a representative body. Her perspective represents many that her perspective reflects many that she represents, especially when it's not twisted. Congresswoman Tlaib is entitled to the same constitutionally protected freedom of speech and expression that every other American and every other member of this body has. And this resolution is an attack on that fundamental right. I spent all weekend in Michigan this last weekend talking to all the communities about the meaning of this phrase. And there are very strong feelings on all sides. And it's very clear that people interpret words in different ways. Personally, I choose not to use a phrase that is offensive to some and that many perceive as a threat. But I also take seriously living in a country that does not restrict, forbid,
Gentlelady's time
or
has
censor
expired.
free speech.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come before you today in support of my colleague, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. All members of Congress are entitled to freedom of speech. We also recognize that words matter and that they have the power to uplift or to harm others. While I've joined the statement rejecting certain harmful phraseology that's been used, I believe that Congresswoman Tlaib's statement that she did not intend to wish harm to the Jewish community by her words. Congresswoman Tlaib has all since clarified that she was intending to make an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate. The ability to have free speech, but to be willing to discuss and to change and clarify is not just mature, but democratic. No member should express harm to others, and Congresswoman Tlaib has been willing to listen, clarify, and express compassion. Yet, on the other side of the aisle, we have seen repeatedly Republican members make disparaging comments that have threatened our fellow colleagues,
Gentlelady's time has
their
expired.
families, and groups of. May I yield?
But I can yield just 10 seconds more.
Additional 10 seconds.
We have had members of the Republican conference make floor speeches about the great replacements theory that's suggestive of white nationalism. As a black woman, I am offended Will you censor your co-chair
Gentlelady's
of your
time has
conference?
expired.
We need to uplift.
Gentleman
we
from
need to allow
Maryland,
free speech.
The gentlelady is no longer recognized. Gentlelady is no longer recognized. The gentleman from Maryland
Rule reserved.
reserves.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this resolution. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is one of only 2 Muslim American women elected to this body and the only Palestinian American in Congress. She has fought tirelessly and successfully to get clean drinking water for her constituents, to ensure that people have housing and environmental justice. If we truly want Congress to be a diverse body that represents the diversity of views across this country, we have to be willing to stand up for those diversity of views to be expressed. We don't have to agree with them, but we do have to protect the right to the freedom of speech, which this body is absolutely required to do. Our country and our world are in crisis. People are suffering everywhere. Historic and present traumas for Jews, Muslims, Arabs, South Asians, Sikhs, and so many others are playing themselves out. And we, as the elected representatives of the people, should be working together to protect the rights of every American to say what they believe and ensure that we preserve our democracy. Vote no on this terrible resolution.
The gentleman from Maryland reserves. The gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Bush.
Gentlewoman from Missouri is recognized for 1 minute.
St. Louis and I rise today in opposition to this censure resolution and also in opposition to the reckless manner that people in this House speak when they don't realize or don't care that they put targets on the backs of actual people, most of whom are black and brown, because of a lack of care and a lack of understanding and a lack of seeing the humanity of folks who look like Rashida Tlaib. It's outrageous that my colleagues are blatantly attempting to silence the only Palestinian American representative right here. It's outrageous, but it's not surprising. And let me tell you, it's not surprising because this place is where 1,700 members of Congress, this elected body, enslaved black people. It's not surprising because they thought it was right. It's not surprising because this is a place where members continue to claim that the insurrection on the Capitol just appeared to look like a normal tourist visit. It's not surprising because this is the place where our black and brown staff members repeatedly speak of experiencing racism and sexism, Islamophobia, get pushed off at elevators, xenophobia, and more right here in this workplace. This is the place. And let me say this. She mourns for the 1,400 Israelis.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
She mourns for the 10,000, and she will not stop. No
gentlelady's time has expired.
Ceasefire now. And she takes the death threats that you all send that they
The gentlelady is no longer recognized. The gentleman from Maryland.
To her, the desire to save lives is greater.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
That's what I said.
I will yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this resolution. First and foremost, can we please stop misrepresenting Representative Tlaib's words? She does not want to kill Jews. She is not in support of Hamas. She is speaking as someone who is the only Palestinian American in U.S. history to serve in this body. Without her voice, we would lack even more empathy for the people of Palestine. We would not have someone with direct personal experience speaking against the siege that is happening now in Gaza. This body needs empathy and compassion for all people, not just people that look like the majority of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And maybe because of your lack of diversity, you lack the cognitive and emotional ability to recognize diverse opinions when they speak truth to power. And you absolutely need to open up your mind to other people and other experiences, especially when they are Muslim and when they are women and when they are people of color. You had a member of your party call my colleague a terrorist, and you didn't censor her. But we're having this conversation now about your interpretation of words.
Members are reminded to direct their comments to the chair.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Carson.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you to my friend. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, this censure measure is a sham. When someone who is an American, a Muslim, a woman, and a Palestinian dares to speak out for her people, she's told to be quiet. Stop talking about Palestinian brothers and sisters in the same breath as Jewish brothers and sisters. My sister Rashida is a child of the Midwest, representing the best of Midwestern sensibilities. She also exemplifies the rich tradition of the Islamic faith in the Midwest. She's a bold leader, she's a fair leader, and a compassionate leader, and most importantly, she's an American. Standing up for one oppressed people does not negate the oppression of another oppressed people. We should be working together to end this terrible suffering and eliminate these sham censors and get back to the work of the people. That's why they elected us. I yield back.
I yield 30 seconds to the gentlelady from Minnesota, Ms. Omar.
Gentlelady is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is glaring hypocrisy when you have Republicans on the other side of the aisle trying to create definitions and say Rashida wants to annihilate people, when Max Miller himself went on TV and said we're turning Gaza into a parking lot and we want to annihilate Palestinians. Nobody condemned him on that side of the aisle. What is true here is that every single one of them has not acknowledged the fact that Palestinians are dying in the tens of thousands, but will continue to say it is us who are not acknowledging humanity. Rashida will stand strong.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
The movement will continue for liberation until every single Palestinian has the right to
Gentleman
live
from
in
Maryland
liberty.
is recognized.
And this just in tonight from the nation's capital, the House votes late tonight to censure Michigan Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. The vote was 234 to 188, 22 of Tlaib's Democratic colleagues voting in favor of censuring the Democratic Congresswoman.
I don't think you're going to be able to stop this runaway train.
The mindset of oppression that has infected our culture has been egged on by that party.
Go ahead, get some ice cream.
You don't want that.
It'll make you fatter than you already are. Worthless. Pointless.
Look out. The alcohol.
Trash.
No, don't take that one. No, go over to the other one. It's poison. Grab a wine bottle.
Go ahead.
A couple bottles of booze. Just
drink it. Eat
drink
it.
until you're
Look out.
passed out. Nobody cares.
Where did they go? Nobody loves you. No one could.
Some junk food. The people. They're talking about you.
Even he can't
you're such a loser. Oh, he's walking away because you stink. You smell.
Why do you bother?
You're stupid.